It looks like Giannis is probably actually going to get traded. I made the video yesterday talking about Giannis and how I thought things were kind of coming to an end in Milwaukee. And then right after I released that video yesterday, Shams comes out and tweets that Giannis and his agent have started conversation with the Bucks about the MVP's future. And then he gets injured in the game last night, a little calf strain in his right leg, it seemed like. In what, to be completely honest, can only be described as a little bit of a weird injury. And take what you will from that. But it did, watching with your own eyes, make you go like, huh? That's a little strange. Like, if we look right here, look at Giannis, look at him go up, plant his left leg, and then go down, holding his right leg. I'm not saying it's a fake injury. I'm just saying the timing is weird, and the way he went down was a little strange. That being said, I hope he's good. I hope he's not significantly hurt. I hope everything is fine for Giannis and he's able to return to play shortly. But the timing is pretty interesting at a very minimum. And honestly, I think at this point, Giannis is probably getting traded. Brian Windhorst came out yesterday and said Giannis actually requested a trade before the season. They were talking to the Knicks before the season. Giannis kind of made it clear that he wanted to go to New York more than anywhere else. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, and I'll talk about the Knicks and their trade possibilities here in a little bit. But I kind of want to talk about another couple of teams that I think should make a play for Giannis and what they would have to give up in order to do so as well. There are a few teams on the fringes that I think people would be like, maybe that team makes a move for Giannis. Teams like the Heat or the Magic, or teams like for example, the Hawks. Like, there are teams that could make it work salary-wise and have the assets to make those types of trades. But do you have confidence that Giannis is going to re-sign there? Do you want to give up the assets necessary for Giannis? Is it worth it to give up the assets for Giannis? Like a Magic trade, you'd want to include Paulo Banchero, but he's got a poison pill in his contract, so that's tough. Do the Heat trade Bam Adebayo plus stuff and assets for Giannis? Who knows? There are worlds in which a lot of different teams could make a play for Giannis, but I feel like there are three main teams more than anybody else who make a lot of sense for a Giannis trade. Honestly, one of those teams is the Houston Rockets. I think they're the least likely because of roster construction. Giannis would be trying to fit into a lineup that already is very big, already employs double bigs with Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams a large portion of the time, and has obviously Kevin Durant. So a lot of big wings and bigs on this team that are a huge part of their team already. I do wonder how Giannis fits to a certain extent and what would have to be shifted about this roster in order to make Giannis fit. For example, would Şengün be involved in a Giannis trade? That's a big piece. If so, he's played really, really well this year. That would be a huge piece. Can Giannis and Steven Adams coexist if that's the case? Does Steven Adams have to be included in said trade? I don't think they would want to include Steven Adams in the trade, and I don't think he fits the Bucks timeline. So it's like, that doesn't fit the Bucks. But there are question marks about how this would work for the Rockets. At the same time, a team with Kevin Durant that is also still has a lot of quality young talent and is looking to compete for a title this year, Giannis would be a huge, huge piece to do so. And obviously, I think Reed Sheppard or Amen Thompson would have to be included in said trade. I think the Rockets, I'm not going to say they would prefer Amen, because I think Amen is probably a better player still than Reed Sheppard is, but Amen's lack of floor spacing does limit the Rockets a bit, and I would think that the Bucks could look at Amen Thompson, okay, this could be one of the future centerpieces of our teams. And then you add him, plus who knows who else added to this deal. Obviously, I think Fred VanVleet's injured contract would have to be added in just in order to facilitate things money-wise, unless a guy like Şengün is going to be included as well. But I could see a deal centered around Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, and then a little bit of salary cap filler from there, plus draft assets from the Rockets to the Bucks. The Rockets do have a decent amount of draft assets, but to be fair, they don't own their first round pick this year, which means they can't trade their first round pick next year, and Brooklyn already has swap rights for it. They do have an unprotected Phoenix first, though, in 2027, and while Phoenix has played well, that is a draft pick that could wind up being very valuable, because Phoenix doesn't have a ton of assets, and I think they're kind of overperforming right now. They have their own 2028 pick, which they could trade as well, and then in 29, they have already traded a pick swap. 2030, they own their own pick, but they don't own a ton of extra picks. Besides that Phoenix first, they don't have any extra first-round picks, and they've already traded away multiple pick swaps. So, in a lot of ways, in order to attach 2-3 picks to this deal, in addition to Amen Thompson, which is exactly what the Rockets would have to do at a minimum to get Giannis, you're mortgaging a lot of your future, and now in a very different situation future-wise than you were before the season, where now all of a sudden you've added Kevin Durant, you've added Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have this older roster that, to be fair, definitely has a chance to compete, but you're mortgaging your future in a lot of ways, I think, to do that. I don't love that idea for the Rockets. While I think they're a team that people are going to float as the Giannis destination, to me, a team that makes more sense is the San Antonio Spurs. They have the roster space to make Giannis work financially. They have the assets to trade for Giannis that I think would be legitimately interesting for the Bucks. And they have the young core that would still be a pretty young, versatile core, even adding Giannis into the mix, that a lot of teams don't have. There's a lot of flexibility for the Spurs to where I think they could make a Giannis trade work and give Wemby truly an unbelievable co-star. Could you imagine Wemby and Giannis on the same team? The defense would be ungodly. And the offense, I mean, honestly, would be pretty dang good too, I think, because Wemby's the type of guy who can space the floor at a very high level, which allows Giannis to still be Giannis with floor spacing around him in a lot of ways. And then Wemby is getting less defensive attention, which creates even more mismatches for him. Like, that team would be ridiculous. And again, they have the types of assets to make it work. Devin Vassell would likely have to be involved because I don't think De'Aaron Fox has enough trade value to where the Bucks are going to be like, okay, we want De'Aaron Fox. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they see De'Aaron Fox at 28 years old as a guy who they can still have as a key piece for the next few years. But realistically, I think trading for De'Aaron Fox would be a poor decision because he's a good player, but you're not going to be a good team, and he's not a real number one option, I don't think, to really be a great all-around squad. I just don't think it would fit for the Bucks very well. I think the guy they would really want, more than anything else, is one of two players, Dylan Harper or Stephon Castle. I think Dylan Harper is the guy who makes the most sense. And I know Spurs fans are going to be like, whoa, we don't want to trade Dylan Harper. He's a future stud. I agree. I think Dylan Harper is very talented. I also think the Bucks would look at Dylan Harper and go, oh, that's a guy who has a chance to be a real franchise cornerstone who's 19 years old. Even Stephon Castle's in a similar light as well. Those are the types of guys that I think the Bucks would look at and be like, ooh, that's a really interesting main piece. If you look at an offer of Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, somebody else to make salary cap stuff work, like a Kelly Olynyk or something along those lines, and again, when you look at the first Spurs draft picks, they have assets too. I mean, they don't have a bunch of extra firsts or anything like that, but again, they have multiple first-round picks that they could still trade. They could attach 3 first-round picks to Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, and somebody else for salary cap filler, and maybe even throw in a couple of second-round picks as well, because they got a bunch of extra seconds. If they offered the Bucks 3 firsts, 3 seconds, Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, and English, I can't speak, and Kelly Olynyk. I don't know exactly if that works cap-wise, but I think it'd be pretty close, if not exactly working good. Are you telling me the Bucks are turning that down? I don't think so. Now, are the Spurs willing to give up Dylan Harper and transform this team in a lot of ways where they take away one of their brightest young stars in order to really go for it now? Obviously, that would put a lot more salary cap constraints on the Spurs now, because all of a sudden you're paying De'Aaron Fox $37 million a year, with obviously more money being paid next year in the years to come. And then obviously you're paying Giannis now, because again, we got to keep in mind Giannis is making $54, $58, and $62 million over the next 3 years. At some point, you're going to have to extend Wemby, obviously, here in a couple of years. Realistically, this would be a shifting trade for the Spurs in a lot of ways, where it's like, okay, well, this is our roster now. Let's go try to compete and win a title. Are they willing to push the chips in this early? I don't know. But if you're going to push him in, Giannis Antetokounmpo is the type of player you push him in for. And I think the fit could make sense. I'll say that. That being said, the number one trade destination, and probably the most logical trade destination, is the New York Knicks. At the end of the day, Karl-Anthony Towns is almost a perfect match for Giannis Antetokounmpo's contract here over the next couple of years, so he fits a Giannis trade extremely well. He seems to want his own team, and in Milwaukee he would have that. Now, would it be a good team? That's a whole other question. But you could absolutely go Karl-Anthony Towns and several draft picks for Giannis. I could 100% see a world in which they do that. Now, they do not have their 2027 first, to be fair, so keep that in mind. They don't have a ton of draft assets themselves. They don't have their 2031 or their 2039 or 2029. That is the issue with a Giannis trade with the Knicks, is that they don't quite have the draft assets to make this type of trade work. They own Washington's first round pick this year, but it's top 8 protected. Washington is going to be a top 8 pick, so they're not going to actually get that pick. I don't know what the transfer on that pick is after this year if Washington gets it. Is there any other commitment from Washington due to the Knicks? It doesn't say right here, but they could trade a couple of draft assets for sure. They could find a way, I'm sure, to finagle a draft asset or two to trade. To be fair, it might be a little difficult, but I think Giannis for Cat plus some other filler stuff is a real deal. The question just is, can the Knicks find enough draft assets to really try to make that trade? And then, to be fair, that team would be like one of the best teams in the league. I would think pretty definitively the best team in the East. The Knicks are already really good. You add Giannis Antetokounmpo to a ridiculously talented Knicks team, and I think you could be looking at an absolute title contender, without a doubt. And I think for the team like the Knicks, Madison Square Garden, I mean, that's the place where Giannis will be a uber megastar. He already is, of course, in Milwaukee, but I don't know. There's a part of me that goes, the fit in New York is very, very fascinating. I think there is some real validity to that. So we'll see what happens. I am hoping that Giannis gets traded. No, I'm not hoping the Giannis gets traded. I don't know. I kind of hope the Bucks figure it out. There's a part of me that hopes that almost hopes he doesn't get traded. But if he does get traded, I think it's going to be league shattering in a lot of ways. It's going to be a massive deal, and it's going to completely change the landscape of the league in a lot of ways. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens nonetheless. But I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.